Welcome to Juggling Interviews. This episode is brought to you by eJuggle, the IJ's official online publication, where you can find the latest juggling news, articles, videos, and podcasts, just like this one. If you want to check that out, you can head over to their website at juggle.org/ejuggle, or with the link in the description. This episode is also sponsored by Play Juggling. On their website, you can find high-quality props like balls, clubs, rings, diablos, poise, fire equipments, flower sticks, glow props, and tons more. Head over to playjuggling.com and use my code XavJuggles, XavJuggles10, to get 10% off your next purchase. It's a great way to support me, so thank you a lot, Play Juggling. Now let's get to the episode. Alright, so welcome back to Juggling Interviews. Today I'm with Maximilian Kuschmierz. How are you doing, Max?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well, actually. It's good to be back, and it's nice talking to you again.
Yeah, because on my own YouTube channel, the first podcast series I did, Maximilian was the second episode I did. And basically, we're pretty much going to do around the same thing, but we're going to talk about a bunch of different subjects. But still, if people missed it, it's going to be around the same subject, because it's mostly about how you started juggling and what your inspirations are right now. But the interesting thing is that if you watch the other one, you know how it evolved to now, if the mentality changed.
Oh yeah, there's been such a big difference, especially considering the hairstyle.
Yeah, the hairstyle. Yeah, you had way longer hair before. So if you want to go watch that after the episode, it's pretty complimentary. So yeah, I'm gonna ask the similar question. How did you start juggling?
So, unsurprisingly, the answer is the same as in the first interview. I started juggling back in a flat where I lived with two roommates together, and one of them already knew a little bit how to juggle. And one day he basically popped in the kitchen and picked up 3 oranges and started juggling with them. So I just asked him if he could teach me how to do it. And that eventually turned into kind of a rivalry between us two, where I constantly wanted to catch up to him and become better than him. And eventually we got ourselves our own juggling balls, juggling rings, juggling clubs. And at some point I realized that I've gotten pretty okay pretty quickly. And then for whatever reason, I decided to dedicate the rest of my life to juggling. That's basically the story in a nutshell. And yes, I think I really gained more, or like people knew about me after the 5 and 6 ball challenge, mostly after the 6 ball challenge, because doing 100 tricks of 6 balls and for 100 catches at that, there's quite a considerable amount of time and effort that I spent on that.
Yeah.
And definitely one of my prouder accomplishments.
Yeah, but it must be like so hard when you have like your basic side swap that you mostly practice, and then you have to jump in like an unknown territory when you do like super odd connections that you don't really do in the past. Like jumping from a 7, 5, 6 to like some stuff with zeros and 2s and 1s, and I don't know, man. It must be so weird to like, you have to practice this for like the entire day. Like you never did some kind of side swap this way. But I mean, when you get to like the 90th around to the 100th side swap, you probably have some insights and you probably know how it feels to do 2s and zeros. But like when you first start and then you move from all the classic 7-7-4, like all the 7-5-6, all the classic ones, then you have to jump into like a weird side swap territory. Man, how do you practice?
There's so much. There's actually so much weird stuff going on. And what definitely helps is just to keep on doing more side swaps, even with 4 and 5 balls. That helped me a lot. And throughout the series, I always try to plan ahead the next tricks that I wanted to do. And one thing that really benefited me personally when it came to like understanding all the different aspects of a trick is to really just take a pen, take a paper, and just break the trick down and find out which balls go in which directions, which balls travel through which paths, and which hands have to catch which balls. And that made a lot of the practice that much easier. Because if you take, for example, what's a good side swap? Let's take 9A551. It's one of the hardest 6 ball tricks I've done for 100 catches. And if you just look at the trick in a simulator, it's almost impossible to figure out what's going on. But then you take the time and you understand that all the A's are basically the same ball that just springs up and down from the same hand. The 9 always returns to a 1, kind of the same as with 9, 7, 5, 3, 1, and the 5s always stay 5s. So once you understood how the trick actually works, it's a lot easier to visualize and practice the trick because you know exactly what you have to look out for. And you can also figure out which aspects of the trick are more important to keep an eye out
Right.
than other aspects.
Like, it's kind of weird when you think about it, but all the tricks like DB 97531 and all the 7531 series, I think one of the most important catch and like I don't know when you throw the ball, I think that one of the most important group of balls would be like all the top to middle ones. Like if you do DB, I think it's mostly the B and the 9 that has to be like super precise. People think that it's like the highest ball, but I think the highest is one of the easiest to, it's like the setting pattern. I mean, the ending
Yeah,
3-1
fully agreed.
is one of the easier. With the top and the last ones are one of the easiest, but then all the 4 in the middle would be like the hardest to time well and like to do real good heights and have all the pattern going. But yeah, when you think about
Yeah,
the A551, was that it?
9A551.
There you go. Mostly you don't focus on like the super high throw because you have to mostly focus on like the 5-5 and the mid-range throws.
Uh, I think that's actually not true for all sideswaps, but every sideswap has like a unique throw that you really have to pay attention to. In regards to all of the tower type tricks like the DB97531 and such, the thing that I found out personally is that it's always the second throw that needs to be adjusted well. And that held true for me for the B97531, the DB97531, and also for the FDB97531, which I've done last year. It's always the second throw, and well, when I made sure that the second throw was perfect, then the rest of the pattern followed along. And with different patterns, there's always like one throw or a combination of a couple of throws that need to go well for the entire pattern to work. But it's not always the middle ones, though more often than not they are. But there's always some uniqueness, some unique throws that you want to pay attention to, from my experience.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cause yeah, but look, yeah, I think about patterns with a lot of uncrossing and crossing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the most annoying throws would be the one that changes because when you do all like the 7-5-3, when you just keep like a 3 beat crossing pattern with different height, it's not too hard to
Yeah.
keep track on every ball. But when you start doing
Mm-hmm.
stuff like weird variations of like the cool 8-4-4-4-7-4-4, the kind of crossing uncrossing 7-4. I think some of the
Mm-hmm.
hardest is going from all the 4s and like timing all the uncrossing to then a crossing high.
Oh yeah,
So it's
very
weird.
challenging stuff.
So that's what I'm thinking. Like, it's weird that some of the most repeating throws has to be like the one you give the most attention to, like
Mm-hmm.
the side swap you give. I thought the 5-5-1 would be like the trickiest one to like time well with a super high throw and then time well the 5-5-1 to then have a gooder one to throw another one
Yeah,
right after. That's
yeah.
yeah, that
But with
was
that pattern in particular, it's actually the 9A part that you
yeah when
want to
oh yeah when
optimize.
you have two consecutive super high throw, that's also kind of tricky
Yeah.
too.
Oh yeah. And that pattern was such a nightmare. It took so long. It was, I think, in my ranking, I made it the second hardest trick, maybe second or third hardest trick, and it really lived up to that name. It was so hard.
Yeah, but yeah, I remember seeing the series, and you said there was like two patterns that were like number one equally,
Hmm.
and like, but how you said that they were different in their difficulty. You said that one is they're probably around the same level, but in a different sort of way. But they were both like the hardest.
Yeah, I think the two patterns in question would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which was really, really tough because you always change sides to eventually have 5 balls landing on one side,
Yeah.
which is kind of equivalent to a 10-ball pattern if you want to speak relatively about it. And there's so little space in between the throws that it's very hard to consistently hit the right heights and the spacing in between, which made the trick very difficult. And the second trick was, I think, 8A741. Yeah, 8A741. And that trick was just very difficult because you throw an 8 coming back to the same hand, but in the next round you have to stack the A7-4 part, which needs to come out in one swing, all on the same side as the 1-8 comes down. So it needs to be very explosive but very precise at the same time.
Yeah, like you said, all the robot pattern that you write on the side swap generator. It's so weird because they have like all the perfect throws and like all the good timing, but they don't have like the human aspect of it. They don't know that after, like, especially for tricks like 3, 4, 5 and going up, the ones you start doing like weird timing because you gotta have like explosiveness on one hand and you have to like time the patterns so perfectly. It's so weird to watch like a robot doing like super good timing and like there's no sweat. Okay, just all the balls super easy. His hand go like this and the ball go like F so easily. F height.
Yeah, since the robots doesn't account for like the effort you need to put into each throw, it's so vastly different when a real juggler attempts some tricks.
Yeah, but now you transition from the 6 series to the 7, and I remember in the last episode you had some sort of more pessimistic approach. You were like, it's probably impossible, but I'm still doing it just for fun. Do you think that changed this last episode?
Yeah, I would say that currently I'm actively pursuing the 7-ball challenge, and I'm actually estimating the time for that to be somewhere between maybe 3 and 5 to 10 years, something like that, which is a ridiculous amount of time, but at the same time, it's completely feasible for someone like me to invest. And it doesn't seem all that impossible anymore. But I think what really made a difference in my mindset was that the last 2 years of practice have been really, really going well. And I've made way more practice than I imagined I would. And now I'm, to my own surprise, at a level where doing 7-ball tricks doesn't feel like that impossible task that takes years just to get one done anymore. And it's more like, okay, if I practice this new trick, then I can see myself getting to 100 catches within 2-3 weeks of intense training, and everything becomes a lot more feasible then. So now the 7-ball challenge is officially on, and currently I'm 1/5 of the way done, with another 1 or 2 tricks coming up pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, but also,
so we'll see.
But I want to say 2 things. First, did you feel around with the 6-ball series? Did you feel that around this time exactly when all the classic tricks are gone and you have to jump into the weird side swap territory? Do you think it's gonna get easier coming from now because you gotta adapt and like once you get all the weird timing done, you have more you have less anticipation to do with every trick and you get more used to do the weird side swap? When you go out all the 966 and all the classic 7-ball side swaps, and you go to the the super weird height and the weird timing. Yeah.
That's a good question, actually. I haven't really thought that much about it because I like to just take things one pattern at a time. But from my experience, I doubt that it will be much easier nowadays because on one side, I do have a lot more understanding about side swaps in general. But just adding that one ball extra makes everything so much more difficult. And it's very easy to forget that you're doing 7 balls when you're practicing it for so long. But every time I do a new trick and it doesn't immediately click, I'm very I'm very depressingly reminded that 7-ball juggling is still really, really difficult. And just because I have more understanding now and more skill doesn't make the challenge all that more easy, because 7 balls are just very, very hard. And there's so much to keep track of in a pattern that I wouldn't say I will have an easier time. I think I'm just at a point where it's feasible and I'm capable of doing it, but it's by no means going to be accomplished in a calm and relaxed manner. Going to take a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, probably.
But at least you did the mental click of it's actually doable, and I'm actually actively
Yeah.
working through it. So that's already like giving you 150 more percent chance to actually complete it than if you have a bad mindset and you think it's just impossible and don't even try doing it. I mean, it's not a bad mindset.
Oh
It's
yeah.
probably having priorities and like having knowing where your energy will go through the next years.
Mm-hmm.
But still, if you have a pessimistic mindset about a project, you're probably gonna have way more
Yeah.
trouble fighting through it. But still, yeah. The second thing I wanted to ask: do you think now that you're doing 8 ball side
Mm-hmm.
swaps, do you find all the 7 ball a little bit less weight on your shoulders since you practice a higher amount of props in the air and practicing new heights? And because it's funny to say, like, it's so it's such a easy
Mm-hmm.
reflection, but like when you add a ball to a pattern, it's just so funny how everything just gets suddenly higher and suddenly so much faster, even if it's just one ball. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the throws, like it's rare that you're gonna see a bunch of fours and threes combine when you get to like 8 ball side swaps than you used to
Oh
have
yeah.
with like not seven, like 5 balls and do like, oh, 6, 4, 5, and you do a bunch of fives and four and some sixes there.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you want to do
Yeah.
some
Everything
three,
gets
four,
the
and fives with 8 ball, you have to throw like B's and A's and oh man. But do you
yeah,
think?
everything gets bumped up quite a lot.
But do you think going down from some of your 8 ball work at the moment, especially
Mm-hmm.
we're probably gonna talk about that later, but the 978 series and some of the FDB and all the wait what which one was it, the 864 equivalent with the 8.
8 6. Oh yeah, the A86.
Yeah, there you go, that one. You're practicing all the
Mm-hmm.
sort of classic 6 ball equivalent but to 8. But do you think
Mm-hmm.
practicing those base patterns would help you like even more for the 7? Do you think it's a weight off your shoulder?
Oh yeah, definitely. Currently, I'm not really focused on the 7 ball challenge all that much, to be honest. It's more of like 5 minutes of my practice, just for fun, basically, since most of my practice revolves around improving with 8 and 9 balls at the moment. But when I go back to 7, I found myself to be way more relaxed and comfortable. And a lot of the 7 ball tricks that gave me a lot of trouble over the years became somewhat trivial to an extent now that I'm pushing the 8 balls. A good example would be 966, which I always struggled with to some extent. Like my record was 150 catches or something, like a few years ago, and it remained at 150 for the longest time. But a couple of months ago, I decided to really pick up 966 again and just get better at it. And now my record has more than doubled. I've done close to 350 catches, or like 1 minute and 20 of 966, which would have been incomprehensible to me in terms of progress a few years ago. But now it's such a relaxed pattern that even just doing 150 catches, which used to be my absolute maximum, is more of like a relaxing warm up nowadays, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of benefit.
Do you think you can see a correlation somewhere where doing practicing or like going off a trick for months and coming back to it gives a bigger bigger improve range? Do you feel like just less thinking about a pattern and mostly practicing other ones make you maybe more interested into practicing that one again and maybe gives more results without even knowing it?
I don't think so, actually. I think the result is just a consequence of me becoming better as a juggler overall. And it's just that I haven't spent time on the pattern because the pattern was already good. But nowadays, my skill is that much better, so I can sustain the pattern for much longer. But I don't think having a pattern that you want to improve on, just not tackled for a few months, will lead to some good results without some additional practice that makes you better overall.
Yeah. Yeah. True. And I
So
had
you
a
could say that it's like a passive way of like improving. But oh yeah, let's go ahead.
yeah, but
Go ahead.
something similar to that. I had a conversation with Tom Diablo, a good friend.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about visualizing tricks when you're not actively working on it. And look, I want to do a transition to your 978 grind, going from this. But do you think, like, when you have one big goal, because if y'all didn't know, Maximilian has a goal right now to like push the record of 978 way further than he used to have. Like, if you look on his Instagram story highlights, maybe it's not there when you watch this episode, but still at the moment it's still there. He started in beginning of May 2023. He had like
Mm-hmm.
32 catches of 8 ball 978. But now in the entire year, he did so much progress, and he has so many catches now that it gets just crazy. Because I don't think it's a normal progressing curve that you have at the moment. Like, you got
Maybe.
so much better at so I don't know. It's almost frustrating when you see your patterns at the moment that you do around 30 catches of.
Mm.
Can you imagine doing around 200 throws now of that pattern in just a year? How do you think about tackling patterns and like visualizing it when you're not even practicing it? Do you dream about doing 978s to
Yes.
actually
Yeah.
you, you see that
I
pattern in your
actually do.
dream?
Yeah, sometimes. But most of the time it's not that good. Well, with 978 I think my progress has been really astounding, that's true. But I spent so much time on it. Like since since the start of May last year, I spent approximately 1 hour on 978 every single day throughout the entire year, which kind of speaks volumes to how difficult it is to improve with this trick. But I also think that a reason for like the quick progress I made with the trick is that I was already really, really good at the prerequisites with seven balls, with 867 and 966. And I already did 100 catches of eight balls in Async Fountain a few years ago. So, with all that combined, it made it a lot more natural for me to progress that quickly with that trick. Whereas if I were to have, have had to start like my eight ball journey with 978 and I had no prior knowledge like I do and not the foundation that I currently possess, then progress would have been so much more slow, and it would probably have taken a few years before I would see any noticeable improvement.
Right. So as I see that it's a repeating scheme. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
a big goal in mind, like the seven side swap and the 7 ball side swap and the 8 ball grind, but you always
Mm-hmm.
get real better at the amount right under. Then you go back to it and it gets like crazy amount easier to just progress. But
Yeah.
how would your practice session look like? Like, if you actually think about every single amount of balls that you do, how do you practice? Do you still do your 4 ball prerequisites for fives and stuff, or you just jump straight into the
No,
6
no.
and 7 category to warm up? And
Well, so nowadays my training is actually really, really strict, and basically every trick that I do in a session is telegraphed. And normally I would just start off with like 3 and 4 ball, just warm up stuff, just to get like my joints warmed up and my muscles warmed up. And then I mostly do some 5 and 6 ball basics, which, but that's part of my routine for like acts that I perform. And but once I warm up, which goes up to 7 balls, then I just go into 978, and I probably remain at 978 for maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on how fast I progress that day. And I always have a goal in mind. And currently, the goal is to get at least 5 runs over 110 catches every day. And if it's going well, then I tend to do a couple of more. Then maybe I do like 10 runs, or maybe I do like 8, 9 runs. But I always try to go to like at least 5 runs of more than 110 catches. And when I find that throughout my practice, the structure of my 978 breaks down and my form starts to deteriorate, then I go back to some warm-ups with 5 balls with 780, or doing some 7-ball warm-up again to try to get my form back up again. And then I just go right back into it. So in a way, it's kind of like a brute force method where I continuously tackle the pattern through long amounts of time every day. So it's really nothing special all that much. But I think the progress comes from the minute details of like thinking about every time I failed a pattern, what went wrong, what can I improve on, which throw was off, and just constantly keeping a watchful eye on like what happens within the pattern. That is actually where the progress comes from my experience.
But that's like a super strict way of practicing. Do you still keep
Yeah.
the fun of juggling still in your practice sessions if you're not tackling
No,
more? You don't have more fun.
no, absolutely not. So when you say the fun aspect of juggling, for me that means to have like a free kind of, yeah, I'm just juggling patterns that I feel like juggling, and that actually never happens nowadays. Everything in my practice is always the same, unless it gets to a point where certain tricks are too easy, then I replace them with harder tricks. And I think the real key to improving quickly with juggling is to always remain in a state where the patterns that you practice are just above the level that you can do solid, and then get them to be solid, and then replace them with stuff that you just are not able to do solid. For example, one progression I did throughout last year was that for my 7-ball stuff, which happens after my 8-ball practice, I used to do a routine where I just did 7-ups 360, and that was just the only trick. And eventually the 7-ups 360 became rather easy. So then I decided to do, okay, I need to do the 7-ups 360 going straight into 867.
Mm.
And that eventually became 7-up straight into 867, straight into a 5-up, straight into 966, straight into a 5-up. And I would try to get that combo every training, every time, and make it more difficult and more difficult.
Yeah,
And
I remember seeing a bunch of
yeah,
connections in the 360s not too long ago on your Instagram.
mhm. Yeah, and those were all connections that I built up throughout the months, where I always started with a easy trick and tried to make it progressively more difficult, up to a point where I could barely do it, and then practice it until it became easy, and then added another difficulty on top of that. And what tends to happen when you have a practice that is very unmoving and strict in that sense, that you always do stuff that frustrates you, is that it really forces you to become a better juggler, but
Yeah.
it also sucks the fun completely out of practice. And I'm really honest when I'm saying that I do not enjoy my practice the least bit, aside from very rare occasions where, for example, if I break my 978 record, that would
Yeah.
definitely make me happy since it's something I'm working on towards for a long time. But most of the time within my practice, I'm quite frustrated and unhappy. But that's just because the nature of my practice is very strict and diligent. But that eventually leads to progress, which is where the fun comes from for me.
What do you think will happen when you're done practicing your five? No, not five. 8 ball. I'm thinking about my own stuff right now. It's so funny. You're practicing on your 8. I'm practicing on some 5-ball side swap that I don't tackle much. Yeah. What do you think will happen when you're done with your work that you do right now? Let's say you all your tricks that you do in your practice right now, they're all mastered. They're all very solid. Do you think you're gonna jump into another category? You're just gonna keep pushing and jumping up to 9-ball side swap and still have a super strict
Yeah,
practice mentality.
most likely. Like, if all of the tricks that I do currently are super solid, I will just go to the next trick that is harder. And I'm already starting my 9-ball practice a little bit. Like when I get done with the 9-7-8 grind, which is maybe an hour or so, then I go back to 7 balls and start my warm up for 9 balls. Where I have a couple of side swaps that I found helps a lot for my 9 balls. Then I do a couple of 8-ball side swaps that really help for 9. And then I do 9 balls for a bit. And the only thing that's going to happen in the future is that when my patterns improve, I'm going to replace them with more challenging patterns. And luckily, due to the nature of juggling, I will never run out of patterns to practice.
True, but
That's kind of
there's some physical limitation at some point where you cannot just keep
oh yeah.
pushing, and still there's a lot of chance for injuries and just tiredness everywhere.
Oh yeah, that is true, and I've
You're
had my fair share of injuries.
yeah, you're one of the juggler that suffered more from especially I think it was shoulder injuries and a bunch of muscle tiredness, and yeah, you had the fair share, yeah.
Yeah, but nowadays I pay a lot of attention to like recovery after my practice. Like it's so funny that over the years I tried to optimize my training more and more and more, and by now all the tricks in my pattern or like in my practice are completely optimized, at least from my current understanding. And I've started to like optimize the rest of my life around my practice. Like the meals that I eat before practice, the meals that I eat during my practice, what I eat and drink after my practice to help recovery and such. And currently I'm also studying a book that gives a lot of advice on like how to eat properly to build your body up for certain types of training structures, like if you're, for example, a cyclist or a bodybuilder or something like that, and how you want to structure your meal intake. So I'm on the verge of like trying to optimize every nook and cranny that's left to help me improve.
Yeah, it reminds me I don't remember which piece of content that was, but I remember seeing a Anthony Gatto. I think it was the Anthony Gatto series, like the 5 episode series. I don't remember where it was from, but he did like all the training and he had some shots at the gym. He's like, okay, I'm doing muscles right now, so like I'm building up my muscles right now for juggling. I just found out. I mean, there's a lot of jugglers that actually do some cardio and muscle training for juggling. So yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. Like right now, especially, I remember saying that in older episodes, some episode I did before, but all the stuff we see this year, like on Instagram in like 2023, you know, all the 7 Club stuff and the crazy advance of like tech and juggling. Like, you know, there was the big era of like 2000s and all the WJF kind of jugglers that did all the big technical stuff, like all the Galchenko, the Anthony Gatto, they all pushed technicality so much. And then it was like, I think there was a resurgence. Like right now we're reliving some big events in like technicality and landing tricks that no one has seen. I'm thinking about like 2020 ongoing. Like it's crazy. Like, do you think it's still gonna push way through, and then there's gonna be some gaps, and then it's gonna reach over again?
I think it's I think it really depends on like the types of juggling, because I feel like in terms of club juggling, we're really pushing the envelope with Kaito and Spencer, for example, and Masahiro, of course. They are really doing tricks that have never been seen before. But I feel like overall, and in terms of like juggling with balls and rings, especially with rings, we are all still chasing the shadow of Anthony. And we're going to be chasing his shadow for a long time. I don't see any real improvement upon Anthony since he was in the scene. There's only a couple of jugglers in the world that are doing stuff where I would consider it to be close to or in very, very, very slight margins above the level of Anthony. But most of the time, I would say that we're chasing Anthony's shadow, but we're just branching out a little bit more to the sides.
Yeah, true.
But in terms of technical ability, I think no one is quite close
Yeah, I was
to
mostly
like
thinking
features of the path.
of clubs at the moment. Yeah, true. I just have clubs
Yeah.
example, especially it's hard to it's not super often that we see numbers getting pushed with the clubs that much, but it's crazy to see that now Ivan is getting some
Mhm.
crazy amount of throws with 9 clubs. Like it gets
Oh yeah.
ridiculous thinking that it gets so much closer to actually qualifying it. But yeah, true.
Do you think Ivan will be the first to qualify 9 clubs?
Ivan?
That's going to be interesting.
You think Ivan would be first?
I'm not, I'm not sure. I think, and that might be a hot take, but I could see actually Kaito being the first to qualify 9 clubs. Or if it's not Kaito, then it could also be
Kento?
Moritz.
Oh, Moritz?
Moritz, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, Moritz is. I think currently he has the muscles for 9 clubs, and he has a very high technical level. And he's one of the rare club jugglers that actually integrates numbers juggling well into his practice. But in terms of like overall skill, I think it could be Kaito. His 9 club flash was very, very clean. And he
True.
seems to be the type of guy to be able to just do it.
And
I don't know.
Moritz did a 9 club flash a couple of years ago too, no? Like 2 or 3 years
Yeah.
ago. So they're
Oh yeah,
all around.
definitely.
It's fun. I think that'd be a great thing. I don't know. It's probably a weird prediction, but when is gonna be the qualifier? Who do you think is gonna have it? I'm pretty sure if they all continue pushing, they're all gonna have the qualify at some point. But do you think it's like super feasible and someone's just gonna appear like randomly on like in 2026? Someone's gonna just do a random Instagram post and
No.
it's happened.
I doubt it's going to be someone like unknown or someone new
Yeah,
popping on the scene, but I will go out on a limb and I'll say that within the next 5 years we'll definitely see a 9 club qualify. It seems like the next milestone that's actually going to happen.
yeah. And actually, it's fun that in numbers, especially, there's like a bunch of newcomers and young, super good people. With ball juggling too, I think about Eric and uh, people like Dylan Tweed and Siler. Have you seen this
Oh yeah,
kid? Yeah,
Silas. Yeah, Silas is such a. I think a lot of people don't know him yet, but he's improving so quickly with his 8 and 9 balls and also with 11, and I think he flashed
I think he
12 as
flashed
well,
12.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's making very good progress and it looks very natural when he does it. Like he doesn't seem to be all that strained even when doing 11 and 12 balls, which is so weird to me because
it's so fun. They're so
on the
young.
surface it appears like it would be so exhausting, but he seemed quite relaxed doing it. Also, the older generation of numbers jugglers are still really, really good, and obviously the best of them all, Tom Whitfield.
Yeah,
He's such a beast as well.
yeah. So yeah, probably at the moment, if we have a big leap, and we have nothing too much going on with ball juggling, it's coming. There's like so many people that could actually push all the limits. It's so fun to see that. I
Mhm.
think it was the 11 ball record this year, right? Tom Whitfield added 1 catch.
Uh, yeah, I
I
think
think he did
last year,
34.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, last year.
yeah,
It's still fun that we see these kinds of records still getting beaten. Like that was one of the
Mhm.
record I didn't think would be beatable in the current time. Like Alex Barron went from like a I don't know all the numbers by heart, but I know he went from like 20 something and then he jumped to like 33.
yeah. He went from 23 catches to 25 catches to 35 throws and 26 catches, then 26 catches, and then 33 catches, and
Yeah, right. That
yeah,
seemed
it's
just because of all the progression he did before. That seemed like the impossible record. Like it would be,
yeah,
but then
it's
Tom, just Tom doing Tom
yeah.
stuff, adding 1 catch, and that was so out of pocket. That was, but yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
but he practiced his numbers for so long. He's so consistent.
Do you want to talk about your reaction when you see that Tom beat your? Was he the first one to do the 100 catches before you of
Yeah,
978?
he was the first one to do 100 catches of 978. which didn't really came to as a surprise to me because he's a much better numbers juggler than me. So I was already figuring that if he wanted to, he could just do it. So I wasn't really too unhappy about it, but it really put the pressure on me to like catch up and actually get to 100 catches, because when you when you're not at 100 catches yet, it feels like when somebody takes like the thing that you want to get, the like being the first one to do it,
Yeah.
and you're not at 100 catches yet, then it's so easy to lose the motivation and to just never go over that mark. So I was a little bit worried that that was going to happen to me, that eventually my progress like slowed down and I didn't manage to go anywhere and never break that coveted 100 catch mark. So I was so happy. I think in most of my juggling life, getting 106 catches of 978 was, yeah, it was probably in the top 3 moments of my entire juggling life, because just being able to break that 100 catch barrier with a pattern like 978 on camera, retaking the world record, and achieving something that I've been effectively working on for 10 years now almost. That was just, it was a magical moment for me.
It's so fun to see that you went from all the six ball series and you jumped that high, and now you're doing like
Mhm.
all like everything just seemed to unlocked recently. I mean, recently, I'm talking years time in your juggling
Yeah.
life wise. Like it's so cool to see that actually all the progress is actually landing and clicking at the moment.
Oh yeah, definitely. Though I could live with getting like a new 978 record soon. It's been a few months and that's been so tough actually, because my last record with 978 was 169 catches last year in October, and the I haven't gotten a new record despite the fact that nothing about my practice really changed all that much. Like I didn't stop practicing it. I almost practice it more than ever before, and I can see that I have improved considerably. Like my average runs are much better. My top runs throughout the week are much better, and the tricks that I'm able to do with 8 balls are much better than they were in October. But not having like a new personal best despite 400 hours of work just for that pattern alone,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sucks quite a bit. So
But
that's
who
something
knows?
I really hope that clicks soon.
Right now we're in March. We're the 4th of March in
Hmm.
2024, and the episode's gonna be posted in couple months. Who knows? Maybe in the next couple of months, when the episode is actually out, people we're gonna see the Instagram post or the story saying, "Oh, 200 catches." Who knows? It's probably gonna be
Yeah,
an
that's definitely one of the goals.
Hello there. Quick interruption. This is Xavier from the future. A couple months after the interview, I want to point out that Maximilian did hit a new world record with his 978 pattern. He landed a huge run of 185 catches, which is absolutely crazy. He landed that on June 22nd, 2024. Big props to him. And talking about props, I just want to thank all of you guys that use my code XavJuggles on Play Juggling. You all supporting my work so much, and I appreciate everyone listening to the podcast. I love reading your comments. So have a good rest of the episode and stay safe, y'all. Yeah, that was super fun talking with you again. So, what should we expect from Maximilian in the future?
That's a good question. First of all, I'm working on a new act currently, a new ball act that I want to perform at some conventions this year and eventually carry over to my professional act. And aside from that, I actually want to do another bigger YouTube video this year again, since the last one was in 2020 and it's
Icarus?
been a couple of years. And yeah,
Yeah,
Icarus.
Icarus.
And I feel like I'm finally good enough to do like a follow-up video, but I just need to kick myself and actually go out and film the tricks. But I have some really, really cool tricks planned that I'm 100% sure that I can get. And once that video drops and I land all the tricks that I've set myself out, I can promise you that it's going to be one of the craziest videos we've ever seen in juggling.
That's
because
so
some of the
exciting.
tricks that I planned in my head have never been done before so far, and are definitely going to push the envelope of my personal juggling by quite a large margin. So that's something to look forward to.
That's super exciting. Yeah. So yeah, if y'all want to see the other conversation we had, it's on my own YouTube channel. Just search up juggling interviews, XavJuggles and Maximilian Kuschmierz, and y'all follow Maximilian under his name. Can you point down? There's your Instagram handle, Kuschmierz Maximilian, and look up the YouTube channel if you want to watch the old classics too. There's the whole commentary on the 6 ball journey if y'all want to see the insights, and especially it's around the same conversation we had about the side swap, but even further. It's way more precise about each pattern. I watched through most of it, and it's really really interesting. So y'all check out Maximilian.
There
That
you
was
go.
so much fun. Thanks for being here. Y'all have time and have fun juggling,
Thank you
everyone.
for giving me the time. Have a good time.
See ya.